The great Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung gave us a language for a truth every soul knows. This Jungian map begins with a simple premise. We live with two selves. There is the self we show the world and the one we hide. According to Jung, this isn't a character flaw. He saw it as a survival skill, a core tenet of the Jungian model of the psyche, ensuring we remain part of the tribe. This fundamental split, as Carl Jung explained, is where our most profound story begins. But here is what no one ever tells you about this psychological division. The parts of you that you hide do not disappear. They simply wait. This leads us to a central metaphor in the Jungian landscape. Think of your life as a house. Jung might say this house represents your entire psyche. And in this house, which is, for all intents and purposes, yours, there is one strange, unbreakable rule. One door must always remain closed. You are not to knock. You are not to approach it. Your entire life is to be lived in the rooms outside of it. You know the moment. You're in the living room, talking with someone you care about. As they speak, you feel a faint rattle from down the hall, a knock from behind that forbidden door. It is a feeling, an opinion, a truth that wants to be heard. But you were taught long ago that any sound from that room is a threat. So you do what you must. You raise your voice just enough to drown out the knocking. You smile, you agree, and you pretend you heard nothing at all. What if the most important person in your life isn't the one sitting across from you, but the one you've locked away behind that door? That exhaustion you carry, the one that settles deep in your bones. It's not the tiredness of a long day's work. It is the profound spiritual fatigue of a guard on a permanent watch. It is the weight of leaning against a door, day after day, to keep it from opening. You've seen it. You've lived through it. You didn't imagine it. The cost of keeping your own truth locked away is devastatingly real. That cost is paid in small, daily surrenders. You remember the disagreement. It was minor, but you felt the familiar tension rise, and from behind the door, you felt the pressure of a real feeling pushing against the wood. Your truth wanted out. But instead of letting it speak, you walked to the door, reinforced the lock, and turned to the other person with the words, "You're right, I'm sorry." You apologized for the knocking. You apologized for the door even existing. You secured their comfort at the price of your own confinement. You were told this was strength. You were told this was kindness. But a life lived in only a few rooms of your own house is not a life. It is a prison you've been convinced is a home. To understand the architecture of this prison, we must turn again to the map of the psyche that Carl Jung provided. Jung explained that the part of us living in the main rooms, interacting with guests, is the persona. The persona is the curated, acceptable mask we show the world. It is the good, pleasing, agreeable self, designed to win approval and avoid conflict. It is the guard, the host, the keeper of the peace. But as Carl Jung taught, for every persona we create, there is a corresponding shadow. The shadow is Jung's term for the parts of ourselves we were taught were unacceptable, and so we locked them away. Behind that door is your anger, your raw needs, your unpopular opinions, your wild creativity, your authentic, unsanitized self. You locked it away not because it was bad, but because you were told it was. According to Carl Jung, the anxiety you feel is the sound of the conflict at the threshold. It is the tension between the persona's desperate need to keep the door shut and the shadow's deep instinctual drive to be seen and integrated. Your entire life has been organized around this single, silent struggle. The struggle at the door. The struggle at the door defines your life. It is a silent, internal war that consumes immense energy. But what happens when you stop leaning against the door with all your might? And instead, you press your ear to the wood and listen. You begin to see the truth. This is the process Carl Jung called making the unconscious conscious. It is an act of profound courage, not of aggression. You are not breaking the door down. You are simply beginning to study its construction, to understand the nature of its lock. Let's name the first truths you see when you stop guarding the door and start observing it. The first, and perhaps most difficult, truth you confront is that your niceness was not a simple character trait. It was a mechanism. It was the lock on the door. You were taught to believe your agreeableness, your flexibility, your constant desire to be helpful were virtues, and they can be. But in this house, they served a more specific function. As Jung explained, the primary goal of the persona is to gain social acceptance and avoid rejection. Your niceness was the tool your persona used to achieve this. It was a strategy for survival. This lock wasn't forged from metal. It was forged from your fear of another's disapproval. It was built from the implicit understanding that the person behind the door, the real you, with your messy feelings and inconvenient needs, was not welcome. So you crafted a lock made of smiles, of apologies, of constant accommodation. You kept the real you safely inside, not for your own peace, but for theirs. According to Carl Jung, the more we identify with the idealized persona, the more we alienate ourselves from our own soul. Every time you chose nice over true, you were adding another tumbler to the lock, making it more complex, more difficult to open. The dynamic was never about your kindness. It was about their comfort. You weren't being good. You were being careful. The second truth you discover is that the peace you worked so hard to maintain was never peace at all. It was merely the absence of sound from behind the door. You were the designated peacemaker, the diplomat of dysfunction. You believed your role was to create harmony. But true harmony, in a Jungian sense, involves the integration of opposites. It is a living, breathing balance. The state you maintained was not harmony. It was control. It was the rigid, enforced silence of a prison library. You weren't a peacemaker. You were the guard. Your job was to ensure the prisoner behind the door never made a disturbance. You patrolled the hallways of your own mind, listening for any sign of unrest from your authentic self. If the shadow knocked, you silenced it. If it rattled the door, you placated it. The peace in the house was entirely dependent on the complete and total confinement of your own truth. Jung explained that this kind of one-sided arrangement is psychically unsustainable. This is why a simple, honest statement from you could feel so catastrophic to others. To you, you were just speaking a small truth. To them, the prisoner was rattling the bars. It threatened the entire unspoken contract. The contract that said you would contain your reality so they would never have to examine their own. As Carl Jung might say, you were carrying the burden of their unlived life, and the peace they enjoyed was a counterfeit paid for by your silence. Living as a guard for your own inner world is a costly occupation. Maintaining the counterfeit peace, policing the silence outside the door, it all comes at a price. This leads you to the final, most embodied truth you must face. It is a truth your body has been screaming for years. For so long, You believed your anxiety and fatigue were signs of failure. You thought you weren't strong enough, resilient enough, good enough. But you begin to see with a startling new clarity. Your symptoms are not a malfunction. They are a message. The chronic exhaustion, the persistent anxiety, that is the sound of the person behind the door, knocking. What was once a faint rattle is now a persistent banging. What was once a quiet whisper is now a clear voice. It is the voice of your own abandoned self, your shadow, demanding to be heard. Carl Jung taught that the ultimate goal of the psyche is not comfort, but wholeness. He called this lifelong journey individuation. It is the innate, instinctual drive to become the complete individual you were meant to be. According to Jung, your psyche will do whatever it must to get your attention, to urge you toward this wholeness. The knocking gets louder. The fatigue becomes heavier. The anxiety becomes more acute. Your soul is not trying to punish you. It is trying to save you. It is telling you, in the only language you have been unable to ignore, that the life you are living in just a few rooms of your house is no longer sustainable. The guard is too tired, and the person behind the door is done waiting. You remember a specific moment of this peace, don't you? A time it was on full display. Perhaps it was a family dinner years ago. The table was set perfectly. The food was praised. Everyone was smiling, laughing, sharing pleasant stories. And it was pleasant because you were the silent engine of that peace. You expertly steered conversations away from conflict. You validated a hurtful comment with a polite nod. You ensured everyone felt heard, except for the person behind your own inner door who was screaming. You sat there, the architect of this perfect evening, and you felt a cold draft on your ankles, a draft coming from a room no one else knew existed. That hollowness you felt amidst the laughter, that was the truth. Jung warned that the greatest failure of a life is to lose touch with the authentic self by over-identifying with the persona. In that moment, your persona was flawless, and your soul was in exile. The realization that the prize you were working for, this perfect, peaceful scene, is actually hollow, is what finally gives you the courage to turn around, to stop looking at the guests, and to finally face the door. The turning point is not a loud confrontation. It is not a declaration of war. It is a quiet, internal shift that changes everything. It is the moment you stop ignoring the knocking. It is the moment you walk down the hallway of your own mind. Stand before the door you have guarded your whole life. And for the first time, you reach out and you let your hand rest on the doorknob. You don't have to turn it yet. The decision to simply face it is the revolution. And in that moment of quiet resolve, you finally understand the truth of your own power. You have become a threat not because you're aggressive, but because you're whole. A whole person, one who acknowledges the existence of all of their rooms, can no longer be a simple tool for another's comfort. A whole person is not a blank canvas for their projections. Your decision to stop pretending, to stop guarding the door, is the most powerful and disruptive act you could possibly perform. You have destabilized the entire system, not by starting a war, but by simply refusing to be a prison guard any longer. And so you stand in the hallway of your own life, your hand on the doorknob. You are no longer the guard. You are the resident, the sole resident of the entire house. This is the beginning of what Carl Jung called the integration of the personality. It is not an event. It is a process. a slow, deliberate, and sometimes frightening process of opening the door. You do not fling it open all at once. You open it just a crack at first. You begin a conversation with the person you left behind. You listen to their story. You learn their needs. You feel their anger and their grief. This, Jung explained, is the work of making the shadow conscious. It is the most vital and courageous work of a human life. You are reintroducing the exiled part of yourself to the rest of the house. You are allowing the truth of what is behind the door to mix with the reality of the rooms you have always known. This is the path toward individuation, the Jungian term for becoming a whole, indivisible self. Your goal is no longer to keep the peace in the living room. Your goal is to make the entire house a home for all parts of you. As Jung taught, the persona, or the mask, is not something to be destroyed, but to be seen for what it is, a single article of clothing, not the entire self. Here is the bittersweet truth that comes with this integration. As you open that door, the light and air from that hidden room will change the atmosphere of the entire house. Some guests who were comfortable in the old, controlled environment will find the new air difficult to breathe. They were friends with the guard, not with the soul of the house. Their departure is not a rejection of you. It is a reflection of their own inability to face what is real. This is a painful but clarifying truth. As Carl Jung might say, you are finally living your own life. So those who depended on you living an inauthentic one may fall away. You lose the audience, and you find your true companions. Your journey to this threshold is a testament to the soul's unwavering desire for wholeness. To honor that, I want to ask you, what do you imagine is the first thing your true self, from behind the door, would say to you? Share it in the comments below if you feel called. Your story may be the key for someone else. And now, the work is not to force anything. It is simply to create an invitation. So this is my call to you. This week, do not try to open the door. Just stand before it. Acknowledge that it's there. Notice how it feels to be near it. That simple act of conscious awareness, according to Jung, is the first and most powerful step. That is the beginning. For those who wish to explore what this journey looks like in a community of others on the same path, you are welcome to join our private discussions on Patreon.